Hello everybody and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today I'm going to be doing a review of the newest Spike Lee movie, The Five Bloods, which is currently available on Netflix. And I want to first start off by saying that I am actually so happy that there are some brand new films that are getting released, even though they're getting released on digital, and I would much rather be seeing these films in the movie theater. It is still nice to be able to have new movies to talk about and to review for the channel. And so let's go ahead and start off by talking about Spike Lee. Now, Spike Lee is obviously a very well-known filmmaker. He's very well known for putting a lot of political themes into his films, especially his most recent films. I would include BlacKkKlansman and now, of course, The Five Bloods into that discussion as well. And I think that that is something that has really held Spike Lee back as a filmmaker. I think that all of the films that he's put together in his entire career, and especially the last couple ones, I really honestly think he shows that he understands film. He is a true craftsman. He knows exactly where the camera and how the camera works, and also how to put characters onto a screen and also do some really cool, innovative stuff. The problem that Spike Lee falls into, though, is oftentimes he becomes so obsessed with trying to push political messages and trying to put everything so heavy-handedly into the movie that it ends up just taking away and leading to the films just breaking apart overall. I had the same issue with BlacKkKlansman, where I was enjoying and loving almost the entire film, and then within the last 5 minutes, he completely just gave away any good graces, because you realize that the entire time he was making the film, it was all to try to build up to be able to attack Donald Trump. And sure enough, this film kind of picks up with that same exact theme, only instead of waiting until the very end of the movie, it has it sprinkled all throughout, because one of the characters who I think is actually exceptionally well played, and that's going to be, I think, a common theme that you're going to hear in this review, is that the casting for this film is fantastic. So Delroy Lindo, an actor there, plays the character of Paul, and he does an amazing job. And the big thing, though, about Delroy Lindo's character is that he is a MAGA hat-wearing Trump supporter, and none of the people around him, none of his friends can understand why. And in fact, at one point, his son goes off on a tangent trying to say that, oh yeah, well, it doesn't make any sense, and no fine, upstanding, and well-respectful black man could ever possibly. It's like, again, it's that kind of like on-the-nose political commentary, which is, it's fine for an interview, it's fine for a documentary, but when you're making a film and you're making it in a fictional world, obviously based in real world and based on real-life events, because this film is based in and is set around the Vietnam War, rather, veterans from the Vietnam War going back to try and find the remains of their friend that they lost, and also a golden treasure that they found in their time there as well. It just really just kind of takes it away from the movie, because several times you're falling in love with the characters, you're loving the journey they're going on, and then all of a sudden it's going to throw in, and Spike Lee does this all the time, he throws in just random political commentary, and you're like, wait a minute, I was enjoying these new characters in what was seemingly a somewhat fictionalized universe, and now you've just kind of brought it back to 2020, and I don't really want to be reminded of everything that's going on in the world right now, especially if you're going to put in your own political twist on it, and it's not actually based in fact and truth, but instead on opinion and subjective matters. And I think that is, a problem that exists in this film all the way through. But other acting performances in here, you got Clark Peters, who plays the character of Otis. I think that it might be one of my favorite characters overall. Norm Lewis, who actually I recognize from his work in Broadway, plays the character of Eddie. And then the other major character is Isaiah Whitlock Jr., who plays the character of Melvin, who is hilarious. Every scene with him in a metal detector is just an incredible thing to see overall. And so the acting for this film is fantastic. The other thing that I would say is incredibly spot on here is, by no means and by no surprise here, the cinematography for the film. The cinematography is stunning, and one of my favorite things that Spike Lee and his director of photography, his cinematographer, do, Newton Thomas Seigel. I'm trying to look up right now to see what other things that he has done. So he's been nominated for a BAFTA award, and he's done, let's see, he did X-Men Apocalypse, so that's sad to hear. But he also did films like Bohemian Rhapsody. He did X-Men Days of Future Past. He also has done, again, it's so funny when you dive into director photographies, when you dive into cinematographers' IMDb page, because you realize that they are constantly working, and they constantly, obviously they have to keep working to make pay. And so it's funny to see here that he did some work on Movie 43, but then he also did work on a film like Drive. And so just going through all of the films that he has done, it's actually quite impressive to see the amount of good films, the amount of bad films. But this film is shot very well. And one of the things that Spike Lee does in this movie is that he has this constant changing of aspect ratios, and even, I would say, the film grain itself. Like, there's sequences that take place during the Vietnam War where all of a sudden it shifts to a 4:3 aspect ratio. So kind of like to a boxed a box aspect ratio, and it almost looks too that it's being shot with actual 35 millimeter film. Now, I don't know if they actually shot the film with it or not, but at the very least they make it look like that, and they also change the color grading of it, and it just looks more authentic. It looks, again, more like what the 1970s would have looked like during that time of the Vietnam War, and so I thought that that was incredibly interesting. And so, of course, whenever they go back to the present, then the box obviously stretches back out again into the typical aspect ratio of the film itself. So seeing that, and the going back and forth in time and also establishing that was really, really cool to see. So the cinematography for this film is fantastic. So as you can see, there's a lot of technical elements to this movie that I am actually a big fan of, and I think that Spike Lee does a really good job of putting these characters together, of directing these people on screen, and just does a fantastic job crafting these characters. But once again, the problem that just weighs heavily on the film as you're watching it is the fact that he obviously has TDS. He obviously has this Trump derangement syndrome that has just become so prevalent in Hollywood that it is now seeping into a lot of people's films. And as I mentioned, he already did with Black Klansman, where in the last 5 minutes he tied it in and put a bunch of Trump speeches and try to say, oh, it's no different than the KKK. And then in this film, they basically take the one guy in here that they have as a Trump supporter. They could have taken that as an opportunity to say, hey, guess what? Everyone's different. Everyone has different opinions, and we can all come together and still agree on. But instead, they took the one guy that supports Trump and turned him into an insane person suffering from PTSD and is going through all these things, and basically make him the most despicable character there. And they're constantly showing the MAGA hat, and they're always making that a focus. And so it's basically like, yeah, you see what I'm trying to say here? What I'm trying to say here is that, even though these characters I love, and even though these characters are part of the black community that I'm trying to, make a film about, I'm still going to attack this one person. I'm still going to attack anyone who possibly may have been African American that voted for Trump. And that is the message of the film. And I just think that it is so heavy-handed. And again, it so distracts away from the rest of the film, which is, again, very, very well done, that I think it just destroys the narrative. So if there is, I think the biggest problem that this film has is again, by no surprise, is the narrative of the film, the story of the film, because even though there's some really strong points, even though there's some really good acting sequences, some good writing sequences, because there is this TDS sprinkled all the way up throughout the film, and it's so heavy-handed, it just destroys it. And as far as any other elements, any other technical or objective elements I can point to, there's one scene where the character of Norm Lewis, Norm Lewis goes through something, and the effects that they use to show it are really, really bad. The effects that they use to show what he has just gone through, it looks like something that someone could have done in a college classroom. And it's I know that Netflix probably gave Spike Lee a pretty good sized budget to make this movie. And just the fact that they, decided to show what they did and to, utilize the effects that they did, I just think was kind of amateurish in a lot of ways, which I would not expect from Spike Lee, because I know Spike Lee has been able to do sequences similar to that in a much better fashion. And I would also probably go back to a lot of the war sequences where there's some shootouts and there's obvious use of CGI, and the blood splattering and things like that just don't really look all that great, don't look nearly as polished as I think they could be. So in the end, overall, I think that Spike Lee has a film that for the most part works on various different levels, but because of some very clear problems with the story, and again, all that coming down to the fact that he is pushing political narratives and pushing political agendas, and I would honestly say he's creating and establishing characters that I think are so closed off, and it's almost like that's what he wants, right? Constantly throughout the film, people say, why is it called Da 5 Bloods? Well, throughout the entirety of the film, that's what they call each other. They say, yo, blood, hey, blood, hey, blood, hey, blood, hey, blood. And to me, it just kind of is very reminiscent of, again, this mindset that, Spike Lee has, and this mindset that exists very much so in various communities around our country, in that it's supposed to, kind of push for this closed off mentality where, okay, no, we're bloods, we're really, we're relatives, we have a connection, but then that isolates those characters and isolates people from everyone else around them. And I think that, perpetuating that kind of mindset and perpetuating that kind of narrative, I don't think is healthy, especially for the current discourse in our country where we've never been so much more divided than we are now. I don't think that continuing to push, the racial boundaries, or rather, more so to push the racial isolation that we really have in this country right now, where there isn't a lot of crossover, where there isn't a lot of discussion, I don't think is very good, and I don't think is very healthy for the discourse. Not to mention, of course, he has to, because he's Spike Lee, has to, at the very end of the film, throw in references to Black Lives Matter, and obviously throw his support behind that organization, which, again, we can have a discussion about the political ramifications of the origins of the group, but I think it's very easy to see, especially with all the riots going on around our country right now, is definitely not a group that I don't think anyone should should just outright, support as far as a political group and political organization. But anyway, if I had to give this grade, I had to give this film a grade, I'd give it a C-. Again, there's some really cool elements to it. I think the cinematography is fantastic. I also think that Spike Lee does a great job directing a lot of these characters and a lot of these actors who I think give incredible performances throughout the entirety of the film. It's just really sad that Spike Lee has to weigh down this film with his own political narrative. And obviously, I know it's something that he's been doing for the vast majority of his career at this point, but especially now with his more recent obsession in the past few years with Trump, it, I think, is just destroying the narratives that he's trying to build here. But anyway, what are your thoughts about it? Do you agree with anything that I said? Do you disagree with anything I said? Please let me know in the comment section below. If you like this video, smash that like button, hit that subscribe. It helps out a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless. And now a huge shout out to all of my June Patreon members: Albertus Magnus, Animation Commentator, Brian P., David Bobrizik, Dion, Divex, Enrique Evangelista, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Frank the Tank and the Shawhan Wiener Dog Clan, Harold Francis, the Hunky Chunky Funky Monkey, Inflamed Wood, It's a Trap Productions, Jason Clark, Jeffrey Toon, Kenneth Cameo, Lady T, Laura Story, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mike Jackson, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin with the beautiful hair, Orange Hat Reviews, Outpost Dyer, Out of Step with Reality, Riff Magos, Rosetta Allen, Steve Glasker, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, The DJD Show, and Tina B. And also to my Subscribe Star members: Edgardo Martinez, John B., Perpetual Punster, Robert Revo, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, G2 Cool 99, Darkstar 57, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., US 888209 Fast, Dean Heiss, Harold Francis, J. Rod, the Beer Guru, and also Nebanon G. Adams and ZK Man, and Jonathan Carney, and Jacob Juice. Thank you all so much for being a member of Patreon and Subscribestar. And seriously, it really does mean a lot. Helps keeps the light on, helps me able to do things like the giveaways for my $5 and up backers on Patreon and Subscribestar, and also be able to put more stuff into the actual channel itself, including upgrading different components, whether it be webcams, microphones, things like that. All of that helps to support it, and it really does mean a lot. So thank you all so very much. Please, if you want to have your name shouted out or look at any of the other perks, which include things like indeed having access to exclusive 4K digital giveaways every single month, and also an exclusive podcast hosted on Patreon and Subscribestar, and also YouTube memberships as well at the $10 and up level, featuring John the Flickpig Flickinger. Please check all of those things out in the description of this video. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.